Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys, let's learn. I did a preemptive sub. I'll do a double sub. Preemptive like, how Finland became the world's happiest country. My name's Connor if you're new. Hope everyone's doing well. I don't usually wear a hat, but I'm thinking out loud. All right, original link. Did I say this stuff? Let's go. All right. Happiest country, Finland.
Look.
Good work-life balance. Healthcare.
This miserable, terrible, awful country. I would hate to live here. Wait, no, that's Canada. Look at this cold, dark, isolated country. I would also hate to live here. Oh, wait, this is apparently the happiest country on Earth, Finland. This is the happiest? Can you imagine how miserable the rest of the world must be? And they're the happiest by a pretty wide margin. Here's the rest of the list, and then bam! Finland jumps way ahead of Denmark.
Is there a pattern? Finland, Denmark, Switzerland, Iceland. So a lot of European countries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Top 8 are European countries. Austria. Wait. So a lot of low population. Oh, Germany. Hey, the U.S. I don't know. Isolation? Maybe more isolated countries are happier, maybe?
Denmark to first place. So what can we learn from Finland for us non-Finns to be happy too? Let's look for some clues so we can stop crying and maybe cheer up for once. Are they happy from their climate? Now you might be thinking, what are you talking about? Of course it's not their climate. This country is full of blizzards, rain, permanent nighttime, at least long winter nights in the south, and mosquitoes. So many mosquitoes. But out of the top 10 happiest.
Why is it that mosquitoes are worse the more north you get? Like when I think of horrible mosquito countries, I think of Canada, Russia. I guess Finland too. Where do they go in the winter? Do they hibernate? Do they die every year and just plant eggs that are super frost resistant? How does that, do they migrate? How does that happen?
Countries on Earth, pretty much all of them are cold. The happiest hot country is Australia, and it's all the way down at 11th.
It's isolated though.
Maybe there's something to a cold breeze to make someone happy, but our theory is not always true. Hot Costa Rica is happier than lukewarm Britain, and boiling Saudi Arabia is happier than hot Italy. So even though the weather might not influence happiness that much, the environment might. Finland is a wooded country.
I wonder if the fact that you go more to the equator, the greater the population seems to be. And so maybe the more north you go doesn't have necessarily to do with the climate or like the cold making you happy, but more to do with that you're more isolated and there's less people. And so you can create the society that you want to create. I'm shooting in the dark here. I don't know.
Got a lot of bush. Much the environment might.
A lot of bush.
Finland is a wooded country. It's
Lakes.
got a lot of bush. A whole 2/3 of the country is forest. That might have been relevant in the 1800s, but it's the 2000s now. Most people don't live in the woods. They live in cities. At least 85% of Finns do. But hold up. Look at these pictures of their cities. Why are there trees? Why is there water? Cities are supposed to look like this.
Why are they not filling it up with roads and roads and roads and roads and more roads and skyscrapers and skyscrapers? What? How does that?
Road, stores, skyscrapers, road, more road, smog, road. It's not supposed
America. Yes, perfect. Nature.
to have nature, but the average Finnish city uses 30 to 40% of its space for what it calls green space, including Helsinki's 52 nature reserves, Tampere's green shorelines, and Jyväskylä's green
What I
ring.
hated about
Finnish
New York.
residents even say that their #1 priority for their cities is transportation, like literally everyone else on Earth. But their #2 priority is proximity to nature. It also helps that Finnish cities are some of the least densely populated in Europe, and none have a population over 1 million.
Take some migrants.
Some of the least densely populated.
I think if you guys are ranked the #1 happiest city, then I think your population is pretty good. So
in Europe, and none have a population over 1 million.
I'm gonna stop pausing
so
so
nature
much.
is always near to them. Nice. That seems like a good way to be happy. Could it be their culture? At over 90% Finnish, 60% Lutheran, and small percent Sami in the north, Finland is quite homogeneous. They have a culture of education and innovation, with most people having a bachelor's degree and having a
8 plus 3 is 12. Yes, correct. That's the correct answer.
100 education and innovation, with most people having a bachelor's degree and having a 100% literacy rate.
Annalisa? I'm gonna pause a lot, okay? I'll do you guys a favor. If you're not into a lot of pausing, when it comes to countries like Finland and Europe, I don't know as much as I want to, and I'm gonna ask a lot of questions. So just get ready. Helsinki, Laulu Tulipinasesta, Kurstalina. How do you have two eyes next to each other? Annalisa.
Not a single person can't read.
I'm so dumb.
I don't know how much I believe that, considering their language looks like... They also have... I don't know how much I believe that, considering their language looks like...
Lehavakala harvet buai desko leharvit. Havrit.
They also have an egalitarian culture that shows up particularly well in its work. You know, flat organization, autonomous decision-making, strong work benefits, and the average work week only being 35 hours long. Just don't show up late. They'll beat the shit out of you if you...
That's like half a day less than everyone each week. That might seem a little insignificant compared to, say, a 40-hour week. But I bet you it is if you experience it.
Hours long. Just don't show up.
All right,
late.
I'm gonna stop
They'll
talking.
beat the shit out of you if you do. Showing up late would probably break their trust, and Finns have built their society very trusting. Maybe the cold and 6 centuries of foreign rule forced the Finns to rely on their neighbor, can't do much alone when outside looks like this, and can't go alone when your Swedish ruler drags you into another war.
Livonia?
Or maybe they're just trusting because of the low crime rates and economic security the Finns have. So could it be security that makes the Finns so happy? Usually worrying about fighting a war or having your house robbed when you're gone, or
security would mean less stress. Less stress, I would imagine, would attribute to more, happiness. So I can see that.
And
I gotta stop pressing pause.
economic security the Finns have. So could it be security that makes the Finns so happy? Usually worrying about fighting a war or having your house robbed when you're gone, or stepping outside and getting immediately shot is not great for your mental health. And Finland is a very safe and secure country, having their crime rate since the 90s, having a 0.2% poverty rate, 100% electricity access, and a very long life expectancy. Their biggest crime contributing to that tiny rate, it was traffic offenses. Demographically, they're also fairly secure at 5.5.
That says a lot.
Tiny rate, it was traffic offenses.
That's the most amazing statistic so far. If the largest contributor to crime in your country is traffic offenses, that says a lot about your country and how good it is to live there. That's crazy. Crazy good.
They're also fairly secure at 5.5 million people, expected to fall to around 5 million by 2100. That's not too big a drop, not like some of the drops in population other European nations are expected to face. It'll be hard on the economy, but relatively small to make a relatively happy time. Geopolitically too, they're in a secure region. They're tucked safely inside the European Union for a free market, coddled by NATO for free defense.
Well, you got this guy. I get so sad about Russia sometimes. Not if you guys don't know America or Russia, we've had a kind of how do I explain this to your Europeans? America and Russia in the 20th century, in the 1900s, were not good friends after World War II. So I admit that. I'm from the USA, and so but what is my point? I feel so weird sometimes calling out Russia as a bad country when I'm from America, who a lot of people know has beef with Russia. And so I'm just going to stop talking. Never mind.
All their neighbors are rich and stable. Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Germany, maybe Estonia, and
yeah, we're fine with every other European country, by the way. Maybe not Turkey and Hungary. sort of good with them, but we're not big fans of Russia. So anyone who's not American, that's sort of why I'm acting this way.
Russia too. Dealing with the Russians has always been high on the Finnish concerns list. They've always had to balance between the West and Russia. After all, Russia would love a port and house.
I don't know much about Finland other than what I've seen in videos, but I know this guy. I know that guy. And he is a superhero.
Helsinki, and the Finns are tiny compared to the Russians. They would get annihilated by them, right? Well, nope. Exhibit 1, no. And Exhibit 2, also no.
Against a much larger enemy.
Annihilate the Finns, but they've shown they might still try. So in 2022, Finland applied to join NATO just for that extra layer of security. And there's another aspect of security, economic security. Oh. Does money really solve happiness? Well, I have two things to say. One, Finland wasn't always rich. They used to be a backwater, a sludge water, a stick in the mud nobody cared about for most of history. And two, yes, money does make you happy, so this video is sponsored by Surfshark. Just kidding. So back to the real economy.
If you guys... Oh, never mind.
Most of this video is sponsored by Surfshark. Just kidding. So back to the real economy. For most of history, Finland was poor. I'm talking trenches poor. In a time when the standard of living was pretty much equal to how much your family could farm, this wintry landscape wasn't exactly the richest. It wasn't the freest either, being under Swedish rule until 1809 and then Russian rule until 1917 when they had that whole revolution.
1809. I know this. 1809. It's Napoleonic Wars. Bernadotte.
Although they generally had a great amount of autonomy to focus on whatever they wanted, so the law, money, banking, and integrity have been stable for centuries, developing trust. This is great news for developing the economy because the rest of it wasn't so great. In terms of natural resources, Finland pretty much only had two, water and wood. Can't easily export water, at least without exporting food through virtual water, so wood was their moneymaker for most of history. Or I guess pulp, paper, peat, parchment, print, you name it. In fact, the whole reason they even started to
peat is from
paper, peat, parchment.
I learned this from a Scottish video, I think, of peat bogs being full of this peat. That's why they're called peat bogs, right? Used for furnaces to keep you warm in the winter, right? Slow burning.
Print, you name it. In fact, the whole reason they even started to industrialize in the 1800s was to build sawmills to meet new Russian lumber demand. And by the time of the World Wars, their wood phase wasn't over. Wood products made up 4/5 of their exports.
If there's any country that I didn't think would need to import lumber, it's Russia. So that's a little strange.
Their wood phase wasn't over. Wood products made up 4/5 of their exports, 1/3 of their industry, and 1/2 of their jobs, along with agriculture. The wood trade only deepened the balancing act between Western Europe and Russia. Do we industrialize like these fellows and become filthy rich, or do we keep chopping trees for the Russians and become stinking rich? Well, they had no time to think about that because the Russians invaded them in 1939.
Bad idea.
The Winter War might have prevented a communist government, but it also meant they lost nearly 70,000 men, 10% of their territory, and were forced to pay reparations. Bummer.
Yeah, bummer. Yeah, bummer. Okay, but this is like the United States declaring war on Canada and then only conquering like 3% of the land and then capitulating. So, look, it might look like a loss, but if I'm Finland, that is a win.
So 1,000 men, 10% of their territory, and were forced to pay reparations. Bummer. So during the Cold War, not wanting to repeat that whole mess again, the Finns officially stayed neutral, although definitely leaned more to the west than the east from this sour relationship. They stayed out of NATO, stayed out of the EEC, and stayed out of the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe. Sure, they still sold timber to the west and slowly started the Soviet trade back up again too, getting much of their energy from them, but they invested that money back to make machines. Elevators, ships, and paper machines. They started manufacturing them and selling them to the Soviets. So from their new wealth, they decided to try to fit in with the other Scandinavians and try.
So a big thing that I see, guys,
out the so from
with Scandinavian countries and being such respected countries by a lot of other countries in the world is you have pretty small populations. I mean, I'm from Rhode Island, okay? The smallest state in the United States, the smallest of 50 states, and we have a little over 1 million people. I bet you Rhode Island would cover like the top tip of Denmark, or like that. You guys have a very small amount of people. Let me know if you disagree. I'm just trying to point out things that I think would contribute to a better lifestyle, or a chance at a better lifestyle. You are pretty secluded. You are very smart people. And you have pretty small populations. And that seems like a pretty good recipe for success and happiness. I became less confident the more I talked there.
Paper machines, they started manufacturing them and selling them to the Soviets. So from their new wealth, they decided to try to fit in with the other Scandinavians and try out the Nordic welfare model. Education for all, social care, health care, maternity leave, blah blah. And they continued this slow and gradual path to richness, emphasizing education and innovation above all to make a heavily research and development based economy. Yeah, all nice, until the Soviets collapsed in the 1990s. So that means their trade with them just fell dramatically, and I guess that means their currency just collapsed, which, wait, that means...
Yeah, I feel like being a sort of neutral country between the United States and the U.S. and the Soviet Union during the Cold War would be a pretty nice position to be in. Being able to kind of benefit from trade from both parties.
Fell dramatically, and I guess that means their currency just collapsed, which, wait, that means their banks, which were already deep in debt, just collapsed, and Finland was hit with the biggest depression it's ever had, as everyone decided now was not a good time to invest in anything. They recovered by the 2000s, but they pretty much gave up paper. It was all innovation now. You might have even heard of some Finnish tech creations: Nokia, Linux, the first internet browser, SMS, basically texting, Angry Birds, and Clash of Clans. All this made with
Angry Birds, great game. Made by the Finns. Nokia, try to break it. I dare you to try and break this phone. You'll lose.
Tiny population. The new Finland is booming, economically secure, and...
Guys, sorry, I'm pausing a lot. I never really understood the borders of northern Scandinavia, okay? I don't really know why Finland is considered on the Scandinavian peninsula, because technically, like, only the top part is part of the peninsula itself. Okay, but I'm going to include Finland and Scandinavia. What is it with this kind of stretched out territory that made Finland and Sweden and Norway agree on this? And also, why does Norway have all of the Arctic coast? I would imagine that Sweden and Finland would have pieces of the Arctic coast, but Norway and Russia, I believe, I'm like 80%, 75% sure, Norway and Russia border each other. And if that's the case, which I'm pretty certain it is, why not give a little Arctic coast to Swinland, to Sweden and Finland?
On the cutting edge of technology. But if there's one thing you should take away from this, it's that there wasn't one moment Finland became rich. It was really a build-up from stable institutions and business over 150 years. So is it welfare that makes them so happy? Perhaps the security it brings them makes them worry a lot less. But how do they even afford it? Well, Finland is not Norway. The Norwegian government gets nearly half of its revenue from oil money. Finland doesn't have this luxury, and the average Norwegian is almost twice as rich as the average Finn, so they've got a lot more revenue to tax. Finland has to go to those industries that were slowly built over 150 years and tax them for its revenue. Finland has one of the highest tax burdens on earth. Number 2 for personal income at almost 57%.
Ivory Coast?
And top 10 in sales tax at nearly 25%. But luckily for the Finns, their government also has a fairly competent accounting department. Every electoral term, the government is given pretty strict spending limits that they have to stick to.
I learned, I'm not positive on this because I'm not sure about the integrity of the source, but I believe something like 60% of the American military budget is unaccounted for. Don't take my word for that. I'm very unsure about if I'm right there, but that's insane.
It's not every year, it's every government. This means they've usually ended up with a 2 to 3% surplus, and although they did get into some serious debt during their depression in the 90s, they ended up balancing it back out with their 2000s boom and then deficit again with 2008. But as their population ages, shrinks, and takes that tax money back through pensions, they've had to go back to this deficit spending, which is threatening their Nordic welfare way of life and could scare investment. Well, what are they getting for all this spending, though? Pensions, free education, unemployment benefits, healthcare, family benefits, state-subsidized housing, government loans on housing, and of course the training needed to deliver these services.
I don't know if this is controversial or not. I really don't care because it's a serious question. I wonder why the Nordic countries don't come together in some sort of union. I'm not saying to become one country, but in some sort of union where you all work together, like you have enviable lifestyles of everyone around the world, and I would think you guys would kind of band together to ensure the continuation of that.
Sounds pretty nice to me.
Let me know if that's stupid.
It also helps you could actually trust that your government will get these services to you. In a lot of less developed nations, your tax bill will come, you'll wait for the new services you'll get, and keep waiting, and keep waiting, and keep waiting, and they never seem to come. Trusting that the government won't screw you when you give them 57% of your income is pretty important to feel secure. So it's up to you personally to decide if you would take this deal, but taking it doesn't seem to make them any sadder. Okay, that's way too much about this happy, jolly, jovial nation. Let's talk about their problems. First is obviously their shrinking population.
I know a problem with Finland. Your winter is too long. I've never been to Finland, but I can assume I'm right here.
Threatening their whole welfare model, bringing rising debt and falling investment along with it. Second, they have a housing crisis. House prices are climbing at a pretty scary rate. But tell me which developed nation isn't facing a housing crisis.
True.
Am I right?
Knee slapper.
I wish I could afford a house.
Sorry.
Third, the whole Russia situation isn't getting any friendlier right now, and it sucks considering Russia was a huge supplier of energy to them. When they got cut off from Russian gas, electricity prices rose almost 50% in 1 year. They've had to get some coal plants back online to meet demand, and it doesn't help that 30% of their electricity comes from wood still. Jeez, wood? Someone help Finland get out of the 1730s with their wood burning plants. Get them some oil, uranium, at least a wind turbine. Fourth, sure, Finland is
What?
meet demand, and it doesn't help that
How is that possible? Well, you have coal percentage right here.
in 1 year. They've had to get some coal plants back online to meet demand, and it doesn't help that 30% of their electricity comes.
Okay, but you have hydro power, wind power, coal power that also produces electricity. How is 30% wood? That doesn't make sense.
Still, geez, wood? Someone help Finland get out of the 1730s with their wood burning.
Earlier on in the video, it said how like 100% of Finns have electricity access, so it clearly is working.
Plants. Get them some oil, uranium.
That's interesting.
At least a wind turbine. Fourth, sure, Finland is happy on the aggregate, but a lot of Finns are still sad. Finland has 1.2 times the rate of mental illness than the EU and are 66% more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol than the European counterparts. It could be from social exclusion, especially among lower classes, a stereotypically isolationist culture, or simply just a bigger drinking culture in Finland, especially of hard liquor. And fifth and finally, two of their main industries, paper and Nokia, Apple destroyed both of those, but they're still quite diversified and complex.
You have a smart
so to be
population.
happy, some keys are transparency, security, money, but most importantly, trust. 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 Trust in your government, neighbors, businesses, schools, I don't know, trust in your dog. Trust that in 5 years from now, you'll also be in a comfortable position, and if anything happens to you, you can trust someone will help you. Trust, 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 trust. Trust me, it's what made Finland happy.
Okay.
But
very great video. I would love to know if anyone's still around right now and didn't switch off videos. I would love to know an answer to this question I'm about to ask. Okay? Do you think, or let me say this. I'm going to say something, but I'm going to ask if you disagree. The greatest metric for deciding what country is happiest would be how much of that country is dissatisfied with their current politicians. Here's my reasoning. The less happy you are okay with your current politicians means that the less happy you are with your current life situation and your current situation of the country. And so, and vice versa, if the happier you are, vice versa, happier you are with your elected officials, the more content you are with your current country. I think happiness is this word that is just unattainable for a society. No, humans aren't meant to be purely happy 100% of the time. That doesn't make sense. Like, humans are animals that have emotions that aren't 100% happiness. It just doesn't. So I wonder if you guys agree with me that would be the best metric to gauge the happiness of a country, would be on one, its ability to choose its politicians, and two, its contentness with its current politicians. Let me know. Love this video. Love you guys. Hope you're all doing well. Would appreciate any comments down below. If I said anything that you think was wrong, stupid, please call it out. I wouldn't want nothing else. And I hope you guys are doing well. All right. See you guys next time. We'll keep learning. Bye, guys.